Welcome back, everybody. David and I welcome you all. Without a doubt, stopping the hate is a fundamental emotional calling for so many of us, right? If it's why we're here today and why we've put together our Stop the Hate Week Summit. It's a way for us to face the hate if we want to stop the hate. So let's be forthright with each other. The pursuit of diversity, equity, inclusion in society is an endeavor that will never end because we have to unwind generations of discrimination, exclusion, and patterns of bias that are drilled into our institutions, workplaces, and yes, personal beliefs. If we pretend otherwise, we cannot truly make progress because honesty and openness are absolutely necessary to make changes. Changes that can only happen when we are able to engage people in their deeply held beliefs that drive them to take actions and bring them to a place where they see not only the need for individual change, but deep systemic change. So to consider how we begin to normalize diversity, we have a great lineup of change makers who will share their insights and inspiration from their own experiences working to break down decade-old barriers that have traditionally limited visibility, acceptance, and opportunity specifically for the Black community. To guide us in this probing discussion, I am deeply pleased to welcome Jawn Murray, who has a rich palette of roles as a TV host, commentator, and pop culture expert. Thank you for being here, Jawn.
Thank you, Gabrielle. Thank you for having me. And welcome to SAG-AFTRA Stop the Hate Week, everybody. As Gabrielle mentioned, this is the panel for Normalizing Diversity, Change the Narrative. And I'm your moderator, Jawn Murray, and I have some very capable panelists joining us for this dialogue today. She's the creator of #OscarsSoWhite and Rainy Day Jobs, as well as a diversity and inclusion advocate. Please welcome April Rain. She's also the founder of Who You Know, an advocate for people of color in media, and she's the VP of Unscripted for Reese Witherspoon's Hello Sunshine. Bree Frank is joining us live from New York City. And he's a Broadway actor and a choreographer who's earning acclaim as his role of Uncle Clifford on Starz hit drama P-Valley. Nicco Annan is here, and we're gonna have a good time with him. Thanks for joining this dialogue. And I wanna jump right in. Let's start with a question that I find that I get often talking to friends and colleagues. You know, last year in 2020, we saw Hollywood respond in a major way to the injustices of George Floyd and Breonna Taylor. I even did a segment on ABC News talking about Hollywood's racial reckoning. So my question to you, and we'll start with you, April, today, have you felt or seen the impact of Hollywood's so-called racial reckoning?
Maybe, sort of, kind of, a little bit. You know, I think Hollywood is doing what they can, but more needs to be done. And I think the most that we're seeing are from streaming services as opposed to larger studios. And I think that's because streaming services seem to be democratizing the process a little bit. It's easier to get to a Netflix or a Hulu or an Amazon Prime than it is to get to a Paramount or 20th Century. So, you know, I think it remains to be seen whether this is going to be a moment or a movement. And I'm definitely hoping for the latter.
Bree?
I always joke that like people Christopher Columbus racism last June. They're like, look what we found. And it's been there. I think that I do agree with April. I think that certainly the streamers have shown up and lots of production companies want to do the work. I would really like to see the studios dig in there and allow for people to tell stories about who they are and believe them, and to move beyond the pain and exhibit the joy of so many marginalized communities. And I really do hope to see meaningful change, and I hope that it will last. I don't want to be the new Kale. I want I want to be forever, you know?
Nicco, the new Kale, brother.
As I wear my green on this chocolate, I just say, like, yes, come on, Bree. You know, I definitely think that, you know, it is about a movement. And I don't think it's just going to be just for the moment. I feel like, you know, there's just so much that's going on in everyone's life as we have been at this place of halt, you know, where people are really, truly demanding it. And everyone, more people are craving, you know, the broad stretch of all that we are. Bree, when you talked about the joy, you know, I think that that's so important to move beyond the trauma. You have to be able to see a way, you know, so for creatives of all walks, the writers, the performers, the musicians, everyone really bringing something of a possible that can offer a way for us to exist and be able to take in each other.
I'd love to hear from each of you. What things do you think Hollywood could do to better address the issues of diversity and inclusion? I know for me, I saw the social media posts with Black Lives Matter and other hashtags. I saw studios and some networks trying to up their slate of African-American or diversity-themed programming. But we all know that that is like a Band-Aid on a bullet wound. There's more that needs to be done. And so, Bree, I'll come to you first on this one. What more do you think Hollywood could do to make some real changes, some real progress in this area?
Yeah, I mean, like, first, we're not posts, we're people. Secondly, I think that, like, a lot of times when people are trying to address it and they are finding jobs or selecting folks, that is a conversation about the grapes, but not the vine. What I personally would like to see is the infrastructure to change in terms of the C-suite and to make sure that people up top are more reflective of the way the world looks. And I think that if you are curious as to whether or not you're doing it right, I encourage you to look at your About Us page, because your About Us page is your constitution.
That's good stuff. Nicco.
I don't have nothing else to say because she just said it all, because that is it. Literally from the top on down, seriously. You know, I think about different type of accessibility and internship programs to allow people on the inside, from the producers. You know, it's just very strange when you're in, even as a performer, you go in and you're doing these things and it's like, wait, no one above this pay grade has any idea of what this world exists or what this is. Oh, no, this isn't pretend, this is actually real. These are real people, real cities, real experiences. So I definitely think that having more of a diversity higher up, and it's not just about writers, you know, it's not just about having Black, brown, Asian, queer, all people of color in the writing room. It goes so far beyond that. You need producers, you really need executives that can finance and marketing. All of these things really impact how people digest our stories and have access to them.
April.
One of my biggest concerns right now with this summer of racial reckoning that we just experienced is performative allyship. You know, folks saying that they want to be down, but truly don't know how. And so there's a concern about cultural competency. You know, and as Bree and Nicco have both said, it needs to be from the top down. And the way to do that is to tie bonuses to the actual inclusion initiatives that are happening. So the CEO doesn't get that six-figure check or whatever the case may be if the numbers aren't right, falling below him. If you have a diversity and inclusion officer at your company, to whom do they report? Do they report directly to the CEO? You know, are you doing blind resumes so that HR doesn't necessarily discriminate against folks who may have an additional vowel or something in their name? What does the recruitment and retention and mentorship programs in your company look like? I mean, there are a myriad of ways, and I work with companies all the time having these conversations about what are you really going to do on the inside? You know, you may put a Black face in that trailer, but when we look behind the curtain and it's as white as the Oscars, then we still have a lot of work that needs to be done.
May I add also to what April is saying? And I think that when people are trying to do the work of diversity and inclusion, they treat it as like the tentacle versus the body. It's like, it is the body of your organization. And really what you should be looking at is the culture of your company and the power structure, because the culture isn't what you say it is. It is the lived experience of the people who work inside your infrastructure, and if they can bring their entire selves to work. And so I often say that I think that what needs to happen within these powerful organizations and institutions, that people need to become a student to their power, and they need to sit down and observe and allow the narrative of how we think about anyone who is othered or marginalized for them to define what that is. And I think that what often happens is that people want to sit back and think about it as like an exercise, like they're going to save the dolphins. And it's like, you need to do the work of a human. Like, you're not rescuing turtles. You are literally just trying to connect to the human experience and believing the stories of people who have not been allowed to define who they are so readily.
That's good stuff. You know, if I may add to that, I also often tell people, you know, diversity is not recycling. taking one or two people and giving them every opportunity is not meeting diversity. You know, so often we put emphasis on the scripted and the unscripted space in Hollywood, but even the hosting space. You know, I did a piece, TMZ interviewed me about the lack of opportunities for Black male hosts in Hollywood. Like, there's no Black equivalent to a Ryan Seacrest. You know, when I go into meetings, people say, well, you know, you're a generalist. I don't know what to do with you. And I say, do with me what you did with Tom Bergeron. I want to be the Black Tom Bergeron, the Black Regis Philbin, because we really don't have a lot of equivalents to those, because unless you are a former NFL player or was a king of comedy, it's hard in the hosting space, particularly for Black men, to get jobs. So stop recycling the same people, take a chance, build new stars. You know, that's one of the things you can do to be more diverse and inclusive, because you're showing that you see the value in a fresh face, just like you would if, you know, we were a beautiful blonde or a beautiful white guy out of Idaho. You know, you take a chance on them and break them in the business, break new stars, tap into fresh faces, and give a chance to people that often are needing a chance and an opportunity. And speaking of that, Nicco, you know, you've been doing good work for years in theater as a choreographer with guest starring roles, but you rose to prominence due to your standout character in P-Valley. What was it like trying to be seen in this business before actually breaking through?
That's a doozy. It kind of, there were two different kind of experiences. One, as a person, as an artist, I didn't feature it, you know, as a Black man in this country and first generation. My dad is from Ghana. So there was a different type of mindset that I had that was beyond of what America told me, because I knew who I was. I knew my family from back, you know what I'm saying? And I think that having that experience as a child affected me so that I didn't subscribe to a lot of the stories that I was being told. I had a moment when I realized last year, literally in 2020, in the midst of the pandemic, doing a show at the Signature Theater, I was like, oh my God, this is my first time that I'm allowed to be seen like this, in this way, in this role. And it really caused pause, because I had been driving so hard, you know, and in the fight, like my brothers and sisters, you know, and it was just like, oh snap, to be able to be in the space where you are seen. It was a different, I couldn't articulate what that was because I had never experienced it, honestly, until last year. And it had nothing to do with TV. So I think that the moment right now that I'm experiencing being on P-Valley and with stars, it definitely was, it's an eye-opening thing. You know, the show itself is very, it has its risque moments, but it has its very tender and beautiful moments. And I remember in the audition, they actually, at the screen test, they actually asked me, they said, so, you know, there's some nudity in the show, you know, how do you feel about this? And I said, let me ask you a question. When was the last time that you saw a dark-skinned, full-figured body being made love to on the screen? There was silence. And I said, so if I am the one to the vessel to do so, so be it. Took a sip of my Sprite and walked out the door. But I feel like, you know, so it definitely is a moment. It's a moment.
Nicco, you saying that reminded me of the scene from Insecure when Issa's character was, you know, having the sex scene with the TSA agent. And I remember the comedian Kev on stage posted on social media, a chubby love scene. I feel seen, you know, that's funny.
Yes, it's real. I'm just saying, you know, the diversity goes so far beyond just our skin. It goes into our identities. It goes into our hairstyles. It goes into all of our sizes. I mean, most folks I know, whether you straight, gay, bi, pan, you like a little fluff. You like a little weight with the pushing. You know what I mean? You know, everybody, let me not take this conversation there, but I'm just saying, you know what I mean?
No, we get you. Cause I think when the movie Precious came out and Gabourey Sidibe really broke through and was able to do roles beyond that and not fall into a Hollywood stereotype, it was a real victory for women of color in Hollywood, because it showed that you just didn't have to be the ingenue or the starlet or look like Halle Berry to have a certain level of success in this business. And so when people take a chance and those opportunities birth careers, it is a win for diversity. So you're talking right, brother. April, You captured the frustration of so many Black creatives when you launched the Oscar So White hashtag several years ago, and it really created a movement that impacted real change. What were you thinking in the moment when you ultimately used that hashtag, and how does it feel to really have sparked such a shift in the culture?
You know, I would love to tell this really sexy story about how I was ideating and strategizing with my team around a mahogany conference table. You know, we said we are going to affect the industry for the next 18 months. But no, the truth is, Chris Hemsworth, who plays Thor in the MCU in the Marvel Avengers series, was one of the presenters in January 2015. And I said, I need Thor in a suit on the biggest screen we have in the house in HD. And so I was getting ready for my work. I was a practicing attorney at that time in the family room. So I'm half dressed in the family room, listening to Thor, having a moment with the nominees. And I realized that there were no people of color nominated. Now, 2015 means the 2014 films, right? So we're talking about Selma. You know, we're talking about Beyond the Lights. There were some great performances that could have been recognized that year, but they weren't. And so I picked up my phone, which is typically embedded in my forearm, jumped on Twitter and said, Oscar So White, they asked to touch my hair. And that's it. I was being snarky and petty, as I often am. I got ready for work. I tuned in around lunchtime back to Twitter, and based on that one tweet, the hashtag was trending around the world. And so now we are having these conversations about not just diversity, but also equity and inclusion, not just with respect to the Oscars, but the entire entertainment industry. And in fact, others have created hashtags that are similar, like Journalism So White, and Government So White, and Tech So White, and so on, because this is an issue that is rampant throughout this country, not just with respect to the entertainment industry. I also very much acknowledge that I stand on the shoulders of Harry Belafonte and Ruby Dee and so many other artists and activists who have been saying the same thing for decades. I think, I had the privilege of having the platform that I did, but the fact that we are still having the conversation about breaking these ceilings, about what diversity means versus equity versus inclusion, and what can we do, now 6 years later, means that we definitely haven't gotten to the promised land, and the pendulum seems to swing back and forth with respect to progress as well.
April, if I can follow up on that though, unlike a lot of, listen, people who participate in what they call hashtag activism oftentimes get criticized because it's like you do something on social media, but there's no follow-up, there's no real work. You actually was able to follow this thing up, and you really have become a very vocal and physical presence in this space, and you really are making change. So what were you able to do to just kind of empower yourself to actually, use that hashtag to impact the culture? Because we have hashtag moments that don't move the needle, but you really did. I mean, you shifted the Hollywood culture with that.
Thank you for that. I had to get up to speed because I was just a film watcher. I was a moviegoer like everybody else. So first and foremost, I had to say, okay, well, how white are the Oscars? And it turns out like copy paper white, like Birkenstocks in the wintertime white, like, mayonnaise is too spicy white. It was a problem, and it still is a problem. And so that was part, educating myself and then educating the folks who were sort of listening to what I said. And in fact, I created Oscar So White in January 2015. It wasn't until a year later, January 2016, when once again, there were no people of color nominated for any of the acting categories, that I think it really took off, because folks were like, okay, well, one time is a fluke, 2 times is a pattern. So let's see what she's actually talking about. And I acknowledge that, social media is great. It's where I live 24/7, but there are like 4 or 5 people on this planet who don't have Twitter. And so, it's important for me to write about this, in various publications. It's important for me to speak about this. It's important to build a community around this issue. And I'm so thankful that there are people like Kalpana Katago and Fanchon D. Giovanni Cox, who created The Inclusionists, for example, and Michael B. Jordan was an early adopter of the inclusion writer who said, okay, I'm going to commit to a certain percentage of folks in front of and behind the camera. who are from other or marginalized communities. Obviously, Ava DuVernay is a prototype here with her Array Productions and Array Now and everything that she's got going on, committing to having nothing but people who identify as women being showrunners and directors on Queen Sugar. That matters. So, I don't take credit for any of that. I'm happy that the conversation is still moving forward, and whatever I can do to lend my platform to continuing to have this conversation, I'm happy to do.
Good stuff. Now, Bree, you sit at the intersection of being an advocate for people of color in media and also helping to develop content for a major production company. Tell me how your passion and your profession work together to make impact.
Well, I think that first working at Hello Sunshine gives me the ability to have those worlds merge. Oftentimes, my profession has not been in alignment with my passion. I happen to be at a wonderful company who puts women at the center of the story and really works hard to telling amazing stories that amplify the voices of most Black women, which is amazing. I think that for me, being at a place that the synergy matches what I started with Hugh, which when I started Hugh, I was sick of seeing just me. I was sick of being a unicorn. Hugh started as a Facebook group with 27 people. There are over 15,000 of us there now, really looking to help each other out, be a source of community and to uplift one another. And so I think that in terms of the productions and stuff that I do, I just am really fortunate to be at a company to tell such amazing stories. I'm excited about everything that is on our docket. And then how much they support me when it comes to Hugh and really helping me get my voice out there and being champions in the work that I'm doing outside of the company.
Good stuff, good stuff. Now, allyship is the new buzzword when we're talking diversity and inclusion. And I know I've had some real allies that have helped me on my journey. I'd love for each of you to share your experiences with allyship and why we need more of that for diversity and inclusion to really be a thing. I'll start with you, April.
So I want to push back a little bit and say that instead of allies, what we need are advocates and accomplices. So let me give you my definition, right? The ally is the person who says, oh my goodness, you are so put upon, you are so oppressed, that's horrible. Do you want some coffee? And that's kind of it, and that's the performative thing, right? That's the safety pin on the jacket or the pink pea hat in the, but I'm still gonna high five that cop as I'm, walking this march. An advocate or an accomplice is a person who uses their privilege to stand in the gap for those who are marginalized so that that person can get things done. And we all have the opportunity to do that. I recognize that as a Black woman, I'm going to suffer at the hands of racism and sexism, but I'm an able-bodied woman and I am a cis hetero woman. And so I do have privilege over the LGBT+ community and the disabled community and folks who live with disabilities, right? And so I have the opportunity and responsibility in my mind to be an advocate as well. And so I think about, folks like Ava, folks like Michael B. Jordan, folks who are normalizing, and I would love to talk about the distinctions between diversity and inclusion too, but folks who are normalizing inclusion and not being, banging you on the head with it, but just making it a part of their culture and practice. And that's what we need. We can see folks like Mark Ruffalo, who speaks out about environmental issues all the time. That's important because what we need are advocates and accomplices who are in the same community as the mainstream, as the gatekeepers, as the folks who, very often have the power and can make the change. Because we all know that we learn best from within our own community, right? And so that means the white men, the straight older white men who are in power are going to listen to our Captain America, Chris Jamal Evans, faster than they listen to April Ray.
Bree.
I exactly what April said. I think that I am all about accomplices and advocates and not the allyship. I think sometimes when you think about an allyship, people end up being woke Karens and they read White Fragility, they understand the thing, they put all the posts up, but then when you want them to show up, they end up being like Miss Millie in The Color Purple, and I just don't think that that's helpful. I think that what we want is for folks to really stand in the gap, use their power. We all, no matter who you are, you have power and you have a responsibility to use it wisely. As an able-bodied person, it is my responsibility to think about places that only have stairs. Like you, as a straight person, it is my responsibility to stand in the gap for the LGBTQIA+ community. Like it is, we all have a responsibility to speak up. And I think that people are doing the work and they think that it's foreign. And I really think that we all should come from a place where we feel like when I'm not in the room, when April is not in the room, when Nicco is not in the room, like make sure you're coming from a space where you believe that your hate is not safe with me. So I need you to speak up when I'm not in the room, when no one's looking. Put your thumbs away and be an actual human and stand in the gap for other folks.
Nicco.
This is church this morning. This is so much word. The thing that I'll say definitely, because I'm about the whole advocacy and accomplices, is even as an actor, you know, space changes when you have different access. And as that space changes, so does my responsibility, so does my voice. And I think that as people become more woke, so to speak, and are aware of the issues that are going on or within their corporations and productions, it is okay to say, I did not know, and do something about it. It's not okay just to do the one. You can't just do the latter. You have to do both. Okay, you did not know. Now let's come up with a plan. You don't have to look to me to come up with a plan. Now you should include people that look like, sound like, move like me in getting, you know, resources, but you have to do the work. We all have to look in the mirror. I have to look in the mirror and say, oh, you know what? As a gay man, you know, you doing some things. And I'm like, but why? I've been gay all my life. But now people are seeing you and you're not the gay that they're used to seeing. You're a different kind of gay. And it's like, but everybody is different regardless. So what are you talking about? You know? So there's space for everyone to grow on all sides of the border.
Yeah, there's grace waiting for
I'm sorry.
Oh, sir. Oh, I was going to say that there is grace waiting for you, but it cannot come without accountability.
Come on.
It's there.
Come on.
A word. I just want to roll back a little bit and give my definition of the difference between diversity, equity, and inclusion. Because
That's
I
so
think
funny because I was just about to ask you that too, April. So go right ahead.
You're too good of a moderator. I should have just waited. So for the easiest way I can do is give you an example. Okay, you as a white person want to throw a party. Okay, and you invite everybody in your Rolodex or your network, right? That's diversity. You've invited everybody to the party. Equity is to have a sliding scale for tickets so that everybody that wants to attend can attend. Inclusion is actually asking folks who don't look like you to dance. So you have to have all of it, but stopping just at diversity means that, okay, you may have some different faces or some different identities in the room, but they don't feel like they have any agency. They're not sure why they're there. They're not comfortable being there. You're just checking a box. So really, in my mind, the goal should be equity, making sure that everybody that wants to be there can, but inclusion, so that we know that everybody is having a good time with agency and power and comfort within that room. And as you know, Bree said, even when you're not in the room, you know that room, the temperature hasn't changed because you're still doing the right thing. Thanks for letting me jump in on that.
April, you might need to put that on a t-shirt. Diversity plus inclusion equals equity. That's the math problem that I think most people need to add up, because that's pretty brilliant. For anyone who may have just joined us midway through, this is SAG-AFTRA Stop the Hate Week. This is the panel on changing the narrative. We're talking about diversity. And I want to get to we have some member questions also, by the way, that we're going to be getting to really soon. But the next question I have for the panel is, have you any of you all been the only person of color in the room or on a project? And what has that experience been like for you? Nicco, I'll come to you first on this one. Yes.
Oftentimes, you know, there's that space where you are I feel like it all started like for me, back when I think about print campaigns, and, you know, there would be the one chocolate person, you know, whether they were the international model or whether, you know, this is the urban one. And then there would be times where, you know, I would be the only person that identified openly in the LGBTQ plus space. And then all of a sudden, you know, I'm the professor and I'm the specialist on all things that are gay, lesbian, bi, trans. And it's like, hey, I'm learning too, you know. That's what I mean when I say we all have room to learn, because everyone has a different experience, you know. I'm just saying, being from the South versus being in New York, you know, that, and if you are in the LGBTQ plus space, those are two totally different worlds. Totally different worlds, maybe similar identities, but region has a lot of effect on diversity as well.
Bree.
I mean, certainly, as someone who works in production management and as a TV exec, I am a unicorn. I'm sick of it. I think that I've entered so many different spaces. I just don't see enough of me. I see certainly a lot of creative folks, but just on the production management side, it's very difficult to go beyond being, you know, at a manager level and having people invest into you. And if you want to talk about like the difference between like an ally and an accomplice and an advocate, we should move away from like mentors and start talking about sponsors. And I really would like to see a concerted effort to meet the supply and demand issue while Black folks are as popular as oat milk is right now. Like, I really want to see people invest into bringing people through all branches of production and film and creation. Yeah.
Listen, I thought I was good with the one-liners and the zingers.
Listen,
Y'all are killing me, and I'm trying my best not to burp. Oh my God, I try not to laugh when you're talking because I know the audio bleeds when you're doing these things, but you guys are killing me today in all the best kind of ways. April, I'm coming your way.
You know, at this point, when I come into a room that is typically all white or mostly white or all male, it's because they've invited me there. So they already know how I'm going to show up. And, you know, and it's my job to call folks out because you've invited me to strategize with you about how to make things better, right? And so then we talked about some of the things that we've already talked about. You know, what are you going to do to improve the lives of the marginalized folks that you already have here? And then what are you going to do to bring in more folks who may feel othered, right? And then how are you going to hold yourself accountable? You know, so I'm consulting with you for 4 weeks or 6 weeks or what have you. What happens after I leave? You know, how do I know that there's going to be a commitment? Because part of it is I won't let you say that you have consulted with me until I see real change. Like, so there's a two-way NDA. You're not putting my name on something saying, oh, well, the Oscar so white lady is here, so we're all good, if I see that you haven't made real change. You know, and so it's an ongoing process. It's interesting with respect to who is starting to get it right, who is interested in getting it right, and who is just sort of attempting to slide on by. You know, I don't work for SAG-AFTRA, so I can say what I want to say. Look at the Golden Globes. Like, you know, Oscar So White happened in 2015, right? And so they started to make some change in 2016, change with my air quotes. And then they started to make more change with my air quotes in 2020. And Golden Globes have been sitting there that whole time like, oh no, we ain't got no Black folks either, but we hope that nobody says anything. And then LA Times drops that incredible, you know, news report. And then they slowly but surely make change when they could have been doing that all along, right? And so I believe in meeting people where they are, but I'm also gonna ask you, why did it take you this long to get here? And what are you going to do to make up for the time that you've lost?
Your work can be as a result of you trying to run from cancel culture. Like, there is no running from cancel culture. It's, you know what I mean? Like, you're gonna show up and you're gonna be exposed because you have to do the work. And it's just like, I think that that's probably one of the most beautiful things that has come from this like reckoning, is that there is an accountability that probably never existed before, but the pain is real and it's long. And even the folks have been like, I know the last, like, you know, like however long it's been hard for you. I'm like, 400 years? That long?
Right.
Yeah. You know, Shonda Rhimes is the highest paid, and some would argue you know, the most successful contemporary showrunner in all of Hollywood right now. You know, her series Grey's Anatomy is still one of the highest rated on linear television, and her streaming series Bridgerton was record-breaking for Netflix and the streaming platform. Those shows have two similar components. They happen to be two of the most diverse and inclusive projects ever created. Do you think Hollywood will ever realize that diversity and inclusion really is a pathway to greater success? Because she's proven to win in two separate mediums with the same formula. Do you guys, and anybody can jump in, do you think Hollywood would ever catch up to the recipe for Shonda's success?
They better.
Well, let me just say, I want to touch the hem of Shonda's garment, because she is all of the things. You know, but literally the research shows from the Annenberg School, from the inclusionists, the research shows that representation matters, and that the more diverse a project is, the more money it makes. Because, you know, pick your TV show, you know, that may have a focus, you know, Fresh Off the Boat may have a focus on the AAPI community. Empire may have a focus on the Black community, but that is just one aspect of who we are, right? We're all multifaceted. You know, none of us is a monolith. And it's not just AAPI folks who are watching, or we're watching Fresh Off the Boat. It's not just AAPI folks who are going to see Crazy Rich Asians. You know, $1.4 billion for Black Panther. That wasn't just Black folks. I mean, they got several of my coins, but it wasn't just me getting to that point, right? And so if your story is universal, then the universe is going to come see it. So why not make it as inclusive as possible? You know, I think even on Broadway, we saw that with Hamilton, right? Everybody loved Hamilton, despite the fact that it wasn't a cast. Had they stayed true to who the original founders were, would have been all white.
Yeah, I'm always fascinated by like the idea that like a Black love story is not a universal story, yet a lot of the conversations around like these like staples exist. But then if I bring up The Last Dragon, or you know what I mean, or Love Jones, people are just like, what? Like if I'm talking to like some of my white friends are like, I've never seen it. I'm like, I can name 30 million white films that I've seen and I've loved. The idea that you cannot relate and connect because of skin color is something that you need to investigate. Even when you are at work and people want to go out and do karaoke and everyone knows all the words to something and I don't, I'm like, when y'all put on Luther, I'll show up. Like, do you know what I mean? Like, it's all about really trying to deconstruct what it is that we want to see, and also realizing that it can't be that we just want to see Black bodies miming whiteness, that it has to be that we are, you know what I mean, or Asian bodies like miming whiteness. And I want to be very clear to distinguish like white people from whiteness, because whiteness is the issue. And so like even with like hashtags about Stop the Asian Hate, or you know, like any of the hashtags that go, like we're still not having the conversation about who is the instigator of the, you know, the destruction of bodies, and who is creating the hate, and who is creating all of the things, all of the oppression. Like we have to look up, not down or across. Anyway, I really think that we have to focus on the things that matter. And I think that if Hollywood wants to get it right, like Auntie Oprah says, there is no growth in shame. And shame is the road to diversity. It is not the road to inclusion, equity, and belonging. And the moment that we focus on equity, inclusion, and belonging, the diversity will come. But you cannot be running from shame and, you know, like running from cancel culture because you feel ashamed that you haven't gotten it right. And then you go for diversity, but then no one is allowed to be themselves. Like it's never going to work.
Nicco, Bree just gave us Super Soul Sunday on a Friday afternoon.
Listen.
But I want you to chime in on this too.
I think it's really all about like, you know, eradicating like antiquated systematic culture, you know, whether that's it, again, you know, we're artists, the whole SAG-AFTRA panel, but it goes so far beyond just our industry, you know. But I do think I realize that as in our industry, we have a power to show a way that the world can be. So I think definitely embracing that, owning that on every level, whether you are a costumer, whether you are a director, whether you are a writer, whether you are a producer, whether you are an executive, you know, taking that accountability, we all have things to do that can just totally change and uplift us.
And, you know, even in the hosting space, you know, there've been, I've had several major network deals or been attached to show pilots and things that at the 11th hour, they decided to recast my position, either female or with a white male, because in very delicate terms, they would tell my agent, they wasn't sure that Mildred in Montana could identify with me. And I would always tell my agent, well, Mildred in Montana has cornrows, is getting lip injections, and is trying to gain weight in her lower region because she's impacted by the things that she believes are synonymous with Black culture. And the more middle America and Mildred in Montana can see folks like me and get comfortable with me being in their homes through their televisions and in their spaces, then it will allow her to eradicate and evolve in some of her thinking, which can stop some of the racial unrest that we have in our country. It's a start in many ways, but you know, we have to take chances on diversifying in every aspect, because that's how we stop so much of what we see happening in this country. We're going to get to our SAG-AFTRA questions. We have about 15 minutes left in this dialogue, and I want to definitely get to some of the questions that were submitted in advance. And so one of the first questions that I got from one of the SAG-AFTRA members is, it seems that we only see a small number of Blacks who are, quote, popular in Hollywood at any given moment. Any thoughts on this? You know, and I'll just kind of start real quick with this one, because it kind of talks about what I was saying about the whole recycling thing. You know, someone like a Kevin Hart, who had been doing stand-up comedy for 16 years, and then all of a sudden had a mainstream movie. So he was Hollywood's overnight success story. It's like, oh my God, we love him. Let's give him every job. Or Anthony Anderson has a breakout role on Blackish, which to April's point, you know, the demos for Blackish are majority white audience, surprisingly so, because it's such a show geared towards African Americans, but the audience demographic is majority white. But because Anthony's having success on Blackish, at one point he had 4 different shows on TV. And I'm not poo-pooing Anthony's success, like, get it all, brother. But, you know, he had Blackish, he had a game show, he had a Food Network show, and he had a talk show on Animal Channel. You're going to tell me that you couldn't find anybody else who could have done either one of the Food Network jobs or the Animal Channel jobs? Like, it's the recycling of the same talent and not seeing the value in some of the fresher faces and other people who need the opportunities. But how do you all feel about when you look up and see there's 1 or 2 people that seems to be the popular ones, as the question said?
I think about
part of the, I'm sorry, that part of that is the casting agent and the casting director, right? And how wide is your network? Because we know that folks are out there. So where are you looking? I think that's part of the concern. Are you going back to the same place? I mean, you know, I'm a bit more seasoned, so I remember that, you know, when it was Will Smith and Denzel Washington, and that's it. If you wanted a comedy or action, you had Will. If you wanted drama, you had Denzel, and never the twain shall meet. and that was all that you had. But we know that there are we know that we have Daniel Kaluuya, we have Kelvin Harrison Jr., you know, and we have everybody in between. There are just so many folks out there waiting for their opportunities. And so we need to talk to the directors, to the casting agents, to the casting directors, and saying, what are you doing? And even within a Black community, are you looking at all shades on the spectrum? Are you having some colorism issues? So you only want to go with the light-skinned brothers and sisters as opposed to the chocolate brown ones, right? So, I mean, it goes so far and so wide, and I'm not sure what the answer is, except to expand your network so that you are casting your net wider for more opportunities for everybody.
Yeah, I think it needs to be an adjustment of the belief system too, right? Because like people get like blue check verified, and then they shoot them out like a star, and then they get burnt out, and then they say you're oversaturated, and then you're never to be seen again. Like you show up in a State Farm commercial, like, you know what I mean? Like, it's just so odd to me that there's like this a culture behind how we feel about like, oh, you're on, like when people like found Queen Latifah in like 19 or 2000, and I was like, I've been watching her since 1984, like, or like to not understand that Living Single exists and how amazing it is. Like, it's always fascinating to me how we think about like who is like hot and popping, and then you throw them everything, and then you're like, I'm sick of seeing you, and then you kill their career. It's ridiculous. Everyone
people
should be
have
like
been
Meryl Streep.
That's right. Say it. You know, like, and people, you see someone when they have arrived, but you don't see the journey, you know. And I think that oftentimes that goes into, again, the opportunities that people have been given along the way, because, you know, you throw someone in the pot and it's like, oh, you're doing this. And it's like, oh, I've never led a show, or I've never had an opportunity to write in prime time. I've never had an opportunity to show run on this level. You know, so there's stages to it on all things. You know, you can't just jump in and say, I'm hosting the Oscars this year, and you've never had an opportunity to host a live show, you know. So it goes in so many different directions. And I just feel like, you know, stay the course for sure, but we have to know who we are, and unapologetically exist in those spaces, and also do the work as well. You know, don't fall to the behest of someone that you have to, you know, oh, you have the power over me.
Good stuff. I think I had a bit of a tech thing, so I kind of missed the last of what you said, Nicco, but I got back just in time to kind of transition to the second member question. We've been told for years that Black films don't perform well overseas, but films like Girls Trip have proven that this is untrue. Do you think that films might not perform well because they are, in some cases, traditionally marketed by non-Blacks who don't know how to authentically reach our community? April, why don't you start with this one?
I reject the premise. Black Panther, and end of my, you know, $1.4 billion, you know, and it's unfortunate that there are times when Black filmmakers have to go overseas to get funding. You know, Reginald Heisman has talked about this issue in the past, that, you know, films wouldn't get made until he got money from, you know, a Chinese company, right? And that's not the way it should be. I think that unfortunately, the gatekeepers here in America do not value inclusion, do not value stories that don't center them. You know, and that's not
April, can you say that one more time? You know, like in church, sometimes when it's so good, you have to repeat it a second time. Can you give me that value line one more time, April?
Believe, church, that, you know, white gatekeepers in this country, in the entertainment industry, do not value experiences that are outside of their own. There is a reason why we get a war film every beginning of Oscar season. Every October, November, we get 1917 or Platoon or you name it, because older white men love to blow things up, period, right? But so a film like Sylvie's Love, which is the most beautiful love story I've ever seen, love story, not Black love story, beautiful love story I have ever seen, you know, doesn't get the love that it should, even though it's a universal story about love. And so I think I reject the premise that we can't sell overseas or domestically, what have you, because there is data and research that says otherwise.
Go ahead, Bree, because
I'm like, show me hip hop music. Yeah, just look no further than what happens to Black music and what happens to the world and everything that is filtered through because of it. I reject the premise. It is the value system that is given on Black art and Black bodies and brown bodies and AAPI bodies. Like, it is crap. It is not true. If you put the money there, it will come. I feel like a lot of times, like, we're like Bitcoin in 2015, you like tell people about it and they're like, what do you mean? Check the price of Bitcoin. Like, we're popping.
Yeah.
Put the money there.
And then when you even talk about marketing, you know, the marketing to us, you know, or to those specific communities, that's one thing. But having people in a marketing department that reflect all people is a part of the solution. So you have multiple ways to gain access to all the communities that are affected and can connect with those stories.
Good stuff. Another member question. With so much happening in the world, particularly in the Black community, are there philanthropic causes that you are involved in or really stand behind? Nicco, start that one off. Are there any philanthropic or charity causes that you're really involved in or stand behind?
My charity causes are trying to stay alive. my charity cause. Just real talk. Those are my charity causes on all levels. I believe in, all of the things, from the hue, from the Oscar So White. I've been a part of a lot of things, and honestly, being having this access now on this visibility on this platform, there are a lot of things that are new to me. There are a lot of things that are like, oh, people are looking at me for this, and look, oh, that I just been surviving this way. I just been surviving that way. So I am still figuring that out, but I'm a part of different causes, and I donate, and I'm active in some organizations and things like that. But I'm looking to these sisters. I'm just like, Lord, Black women are so beautiful. Y'all just be, I'm like, Lord, like real talk, so I'm grateful for the work that y'all are doing and the program.
Well, Hughes started out as a Facebook group and is now a 501c3. We are waiting for our tax exempt status from the government. Come through, Uncle Sam, please. But we have mentorship programs, and we have, as soon as the world goes back to normal, we'll resume on mixers. And so all of my free time is centered in trying to elevate the voices within Hugh and just trying to be responsible with the power that I have. And so that is really my passion, and all the other independent films and folks that are looking for support to tell their stories. Like, I spend a lot of my time trying to make sure their voices are amplified as well.
My organization is not a nonprofit, but I am a co-founder of Sister SCOTUS at sisterscotus.org. And we have the She Will Rise campaign, which works to ensure greater equality in America by ensuring a Black woman justice on the United States Supreme Court for the first time ever. So President Biden has committed to nominating a Black woman, but we've seen with Kristen Clark right now, Vanita Gupta, that nomination doesn't mean necessarily confirmation. And so what we are providing is groundswell support for President Biden, so that when the time arises, we can in fact have a qualified Black woman as the first Black woman Supreme Court justice, because cultural competency matters. And we see not just at the Supreme Court, but throughout the judicial process. We see right now with the Derek Chauvin trial. We see right now with all of these officers that are not being held accountable for state-sanctioned violence. The prosecutors and the judges have an important role to play. And if they cannot at least have a touchstone within the community that's affected, I think that's part of the reason why we're seeing some of the results that we are.
Good stuff. Another member question. Are there types of roles spotlighting the Black community that you no longer wish to see in film or television? April, I'm gonna come back to you. Let you start this one off.
Black trauma. I'm done. I ask, for whom are movies that show our enslavement made? They're not for us. They're not for the Black community. We get it. We've seen Roots and 12 Years a Slave and so many other films. So that means that they are made for white folks, right? And why should my pain and trauma be someone else's entertainment? So with respect to film, I'm really not supporting them. And I, in fact, don't even share videos of state-sanctioned violence against Black folks, because I think that it weighs on us. How many times can you watch the knee on George Floyd's neck? And if you need video at this point to believe that we are being hunted like animals, then any video is not going to change your mind. I understand that the videos are important, and very often they lead to at least indictments or arrests because, of the way this, I call it the criminal legal system, because there isn't any justice for us. I get it, but if we're talking about TV and film, I just believe that there are so many aspects of our experience that are not being portrayed. The joy and love and just getting a freaking latte. You know, we should be able to just exist on camera without having to, you know, be a, you know, after school special about this is what Black life is like.
Good stuff. I want to get to a few more questions. We have about 5 minutes left, so I'm gonna individualize a few of these. Bree, I'm gonna come to you with this one. I've noticed a number of Black actors get behind the Crown Act. Is there anything that's being done in this space that can spill over into the hair and makeup on set conversation?
So to get behind the Crown Act? Oh, I know what you know. Yes, I do believe that we have to unionize HMU artists to make sure that we can have representation when it comes to actresses. Like, Black hair should stop being a mystery. It's not a mystery. There are lots of Black women and men. Find them and let them do the hair, and make sure that the unions are advocating to get them access so that they can be on film sets.
Yeah, I've been seeing those stories that folks like Sherry Shepherd and the young lady that was in High School Musical have shared about their horror stories about having to do their own hair or wear headbands and all types of things because there were people who did not understand how to actually style or maintain Black hair, grooming them on sets. And it was a bit of a horror story for them, and they weren't in horror films. Nicco, I'd love to hear from any of you all, well, I'm coming to you about this, Nicco, whether more Black writers are needed to be employed to authentically tell Black stories or characters as a whole. You know, working on a show like P-Valley, you know, which is in many aspects an authentic Black experience, do you think that, you know, other shows need to make sure that the writer's room and the people telling these stories, you know, really are diverse and inclusive so that the stories are authentic?
Absolutely. I think that the more diverse your writer's room is, the more widespan the stories, whether that is having able-bodied people who have had different experiences of life, international experiences, you know, all different kinds of identities. I think that all filters in. You're building a world. This writer's room is building a world, a whole universe of who all these characters are, you know, different ways to have entry points into the hearts of the audience, you know, that's watching the show. So of course, the more diverse that room is, the more impactful, I believe, the stories. And as an actor, regardless of my skin, regardless of my identity, I'm seeing the humanity. You know, that's what I want to connect with. I don't only want to connect with the trauma in 12 Years a Slave. I want to connect with the joy, because they had to have some joy in that time period. They had to have a song. They had to have a flower. There were moments of joy. So even as an artist, as an actor, I find it my responsibility to bring those moments, even if they didn't script it. My job, when I go back into that spirit of that person, it has to be there. But see, I also have been afforded the opportunity to create that space from the head. Do you understand what I mean? Mm-hmm. And I'm very well aware that every artist does not have that opportunity. So you got to take it for yourself. You got to take it for yourself.
This will be our final question, and I'll get each of you to take a pass on this, and it's very appropriate to the times. The member question is, with all that's happening in Georgia, do you think withholding Black dollars or corporate dollars will make a difference in changing laws and policies? Bree, you start this one off.
I don't know if it'll make a difference, but I think it's absolutely necessary. I mean, like, that's all I have to say. I think that, you know, the system is a system, and it needs to be completely dismantled. But I think it's important not to support hate. And I think it's important to stand up for what is happening there, which is disgusting. And I think that every organization who actually cares and doesn't want to be performative should do the same thing.
Nicco?
Agreed.
April?
Yeah. Big same. You know, voter suppression is rampant throughout this country. We're seeing it's very obvious in Georgia. And, you know, just like the MLB pulled out, I think that the entertainment industry should pull out also, because every single industry, regardless of whether we're talking about politics or the entertainment industry or tech or what have you, the bottom line is dollars. And when you remove those dollars, that's when you see substantive change.
As we begin to wrap up, any final words of wisdom to anybody who may be watching that want to know what's the one thing I could do right now to positively impact my pursuit towards being a more diverse and inclusive person in this business? Bree, what would be your one thing that somebody could do to make change right now?
I think that the work is not outside of you, it's inside of you. My favorite quote, I cannot say it in Latin, but it's by some dude named Terrence that I learned from Maya Angelou. And when you translate it, it says, I am human, therefore I shall deem nothing human alien to me. And I think that the moment that you connect the world of anyone who is othered, whatever the thing is, the moment that you understand that you and that person are the same, and you should not alienate yourself from the experience that they have lived, that you will be a better human and they will have a better experience. Be responsible with your power.
Good stuff. Nicco.
Breathe and believe. Breathe and believe. You know, loving others, acknowledging others does not eradicate who you are.
April.
Educate yourself. You know, Google is still free. There are so many resources. Please don't reach out to your one Black friend, your one queer friend, whatever, and say, teach me everything about your life. But there are a myriad of resources, books, even films that can give you insight into someone else's experience. And I truly believe that when you walk in someone else's shoes, to the extent that you can, when you learn more about that particular community, it's much harder to be discriminatory or bigoted with respect to that community.
And I'll offer, take a chance, hire someone, invest in the star, the executive, the diverse person of tomorrow. You'll be glad that you did. I want to thank Nicco, Bree, and April for joining the panel, changing the narrative for SAG-AFTRA today. Again, I'm your host and moderator, Jawn Murray. I really enjoyed leading this dialogue. And now back to you, Gabrielle.
Jawn, you are fabulous. You all were so wonderful. I just have to quote, just take a chance and invest, be responsible with your power, educate, be and believe. All right. I think these are important messages. So thank you very much. You know, we have to keep reaching out to make a change. So I really appreciate everything that you've done today with us and what we know will happen in the future. It's very meaningful. We'll be back.
But before you say that, I just want to say, there are a lot of conversations going on around Hollywood. There are very few that went as deep as you all went and as broad, bringing up issues that may cause discomfort, not only talking them through, but also providing solutions. Just a great, wonderful conversation. Thank you all so much for being here. Thank you.
Great.
Thank
and
you.
really talking about real access points is so important.
Absolutely.
So, and to know that a lot of what you're talking about are the discussions we're having within the union and the industry as a whole, because we know that the only way change will happen is if people really can hear the stories and understand that it takes all of us to make real stories. So thank you very much. We will be back here in just a half hour from now at 11:45 Pacific and at that's 2:45 Eastern for our UCLA's Hollywood Diversity Report series, connecting the dots between industry inclusion and the bottom line. In the meantime, do follow on our ongoing discussion on social media by looking for the hashtag Stop the Hate. You all are wonderful. Thank you and God bless you.
Thank you.
Bye-bye. God bless.